All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to the Dota Procast episode number 3. You know, doing 2 episodes, it's like, okay, yeah, we'll see how real these guys are. We're at episode number 3. I think it's safe to say we have officially made it as far as a Dota 2 podcast goes. Congratulations, us. This is probably going to be our last one as a result. So, No, anyways. No, but excited to be here once again and talking some more competitive Dota 2. Obviously, we are on another day of the week. It's had some issues running into earlier on in the week, but we're still committed to doing one for this week, as let's just say there is plenty to talk about. I'm BreakyCPK, as usual, joined by Elevated once again. How's it going, man?
Really, really good. I might have had too much coffee today. I just drank my second cold brew nitro coffee, but at least it's giving me enough energy to make it through all these qualifiers going on today.
Dear God, there is a lot of qualifiers going on. Obviously, it's kicking off as far as the Han qualifier. I can't believe I just said that. Somebody typed Han for life in chat, and I quickly saw that. Han qualifiers don't exist anymore. Anyways, the Dota 2 qualifiers going on for TI8. The open qualifiers taking place. And it's crazy with this year how the open qualifiers, they've always meant, you know, something, but it's almost like they're the actual qualifiers for some of these teams. It's just ridiculous because of how the format was set up with the DPC this year. But there is a lot of Dota to watch, Donnie.
Oh, it's crazy, man. I mean, right now, as we speak, we've got the likes of VGJ Storm, we've got Complexity, OG just finished their games. Like, These are some big name teams, and they're all playing right now for a spot in the regional qualifiers. So yeah, I mean, like you said, the opens are basically the real qualifiers. And to be perfectly honest, this is I would say my second favorite time of the Dota season, shortly or closely following the actual main event of TI. I think that this is super, super, super exciting.
Yeah. No,
maybe more exciting than the group stages of TI.
You could argue that. I could see that because of just what is on the line for all these regions, and especially regions like CIS and Europe. You know, we'll get into that a little bit later on, but of course they officially announced how many teams from each region are going. There might have been a little bit of drama. I don't know. We'll get to that later and give our opinions as far as 3NA and a number 1. That's for sure. No, but we're going to be talking about that a little bit later on. Before we get into all of that, though, I think it's worth at least talking about the Super Major, of course, the final event of the season, and kind of recapping what took place as far as the Super Major is concerned. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Super Major concluding. Again, this was the biggest event of the year, both in terms of prize pool, DPC points, and everything. We came into it with a couple of storylines, one of the bigger ones being, would Optic be able to claim a top TI8 spot? As a result, they ended up having to match up against Virtus Pro in what was essentially a 6-team remaining matchup to get to the top 4. They were defeated 2-0, which made their chances non-existent in the end. And Virtus Pro went all the way to the grand finals and set up to have one of the better grand finals, actually, of the season against Team Liquid. But how about that storyline, though, of Optic? And, you know, I almost want to say it couldn't have been any better in terms of how the storyline played out for a team like Optic, who wasn't even going to this event in the first place. And then they were on the verge of qualifying for TI8, but running up against what's arguably the best team in the world right now.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I love that Virtus Pro ended up being the gatekeepers for Optic to have to get past. Like, there really is no better kind of way for this team to prove that they deserve to be there than to beat Virtus Pro. Obviously, that didn't happen, but even those games, like, you know, Virtus Pro 2-0'd them, but they were pretty exciting games just because there was so much on the line. And Optic, you know, they're no slouch. They definitely showed up and they performed well, but obviously not well enough to beat Virtus Pro.
Yeah, so coming up just short right there, but again, it's not like, part of me feels bad for them, especially, you know, being a fan of PPD and Zion and everything, and a Dota after all, but in the end, this was a team that, you know, got a lucky chance in the first place to even come so close as far as qualify for TI8, but they're going to have to do it through the qualifiers now as a result, of course. But that also leads me into the grand finals, Virtus Pro versus Team Liquid. I ended up not necessarily, I mean, I guess it was by choice at the end, but I was also doing a bit of casting on the side for New From UA as a YouTube, you know, highlight creator. So that kind of had me watching / semi-casting the matches. So I definitely got to absorb a lot what happened. And that final day especially, Virtus.pro ended up playing 8 games in total because they went the distance against LGD, and then they went the distance against Liquid, ultimately falling for a runner-up finish. But Liquid finally claimed a major victory here at the end of the season, and they had to defeat Virtus.pro to do so. Could there have been a better finish, man, to the season?
I mean, probably not. Honestly, like we got what we wanted out of this major. The top 4 teams in the tournament were probably the top 4 teams in the world. Then we had PSG, LGD, who beat Virtus.pro early to knock them to the lower bracket, ended up matching up against Virtus.pro again in the lower bracket final. Virtus.pro beat them and proved that they can, in fact, beat this Chinese team that sort of had their number for the last, I don't know, like 2 or 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get the classic matchup from the beginning of the season, which was Liquid against Virtus.pro in like every tournament. And Liquid kind of rounded into form at just the right time as well.
Yeah, Liquid's had an interesting run throughout this season, and that there was some stat that was brought up too, as far as specifically with Team Liquid throughout this whole season. And when it came to, I mean, first off, this was their first major victory. When you kind of think about that, there was 11 majors throughout this year. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, 9 majors. That's right. There were a couple that were cut. Anyways, even at 9 majors, they weren't able to win one. And then Virtus.pro, on the other hand, of course, took 4 of the majors throughout the year, which is why they had so many points in the end. But they finished second as far as one of the majors. But again, overall, weren't necessarily top performing. They did win a couple of minors. But there was another stat. What was it? Oh, that's what it was. They had never won a double elimination tournament in general this season. So even their minors, okay. This season, not previous seasons, but again, the minors that they won were actually single elimination tournaments. It was kind of group straight into single elimination. So I feel
like there weren't a whole lot of double elimination tournaments.
There might not have been. That's a good point.
I feel like we complained a lot about that.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong.
So the chances may not have been there. But, Liquid. So I guess throughout the season, obviously they're a top team, no doubt, in the overall DPC. But I don't want to say they had a disappointing run by any means this season. But, yeah, they were maybe a little bit flatter than what we expected, being the defending TI champions. But to finish off the season this way, I mean, they have to, of course, be one of the expected teams to do very well at TI8 now, but we still got a couple of months away, so let's get ahead of ourselves.
I mean, they looked really, really good in this tournament. Like, they completely dominated a number of really good teams. They made TNC look like they shouldn't have even been in the same game as them. They crushed Team Secret. And obviously, beating Virtus.pro is and actually, I mean, they crushed PSG LGD as well. Beating Virtus.pro in the finals, I mean, based on their performance throughout the tournament, it's not that surprising. But based on like the overall season, it is a little bit of a surprising result.
Yeah.
So maybe it's weird to call them the underdogs in this grand final, but I think that was probably the case, at least, taking into account the entire season.
Yeah, I predicted Virtus.pro, of course, winning it all. I think you predicted LGD, so I did slightly better than you, and that's what matters in the end, so I win there. But yeah, neither one of us predicting Liquid in the finals, and I don't think we were wrong at that, considering how the previous events had gone, but definitely getting hot at the right time. But like I said, though, this is that interesting time now. Yes, you qualify for TA. Congratulations. Now you have 2 months to kind of just sit around and, hope that maybe there's an event that pops up. Now, there's been rumors, there might be another summit that happens in between. There might be another event or here, and, perhaps they'll get to play at that. But it could also be a little bit of a, scary thing for some of these teams not getting the most practice before TIA, right? I would think that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like one of the things that we see a lot is the teams that end up having to grind it out in the qualifiers tend to do quite well at TI because they're getting so many reps and they're like developing these strategies and testing them out. And then they're picking stuff from other people and seeing what works. And usually it's those teams that have a really good grasp on the meta going into TI that end up kind of being the dark horses at the actual event. So there definitely is some concern as far as getting complacent just because there isn't a whole lot to do. Are they just going to scrim against Virtus.pro for the next 2 months? Like, they can, I guess, but you know, what does that really do for them in the long run?
Yeah, exactly. But then you got to talk, do they want to scrim against each other? You know, one team may not want to scrim against the other to give stuff away, right? To give strategy away. So definitely some mind games coming out. It'll be interesting to see what they do. But again, qualifying for TI, I think they would rather have that than having to play through what's going to be a chaotic qualifier season, as they've been stressing right here. So, I mean, any other storylines from the Super Major? I mean, some disappointing teams maybe. I think, I don't know, Newbie, I guess you could say to an extent, but I personally haven't been a biggest fan of Newbie throughout this year. I know that they ended up qualifying for TI8, of course, but, you know, they dropped Avicii Gaming in the end. I'm not expecting a lot out of Newbie going into TI8, I'll say that.
Yeah, I'm not either. I think maybe the other storyline would just be kind of like the separation between the top four and everybody else, because I wouldn't say that anyone looked particularly good or close to Virtus Pro, Secret, LGD, and Liquid in this tournament. Mineski had a pretty disappointing run. I mean, they lost to PSG LGD, which is, you know, not a big upset, obviously, but then they lost to Vici Gaming in the lower bracket, which was definitely not something that would be expected.
It's a tough couple of matches. I'll say that. Yeah. Those aren't free wins by any means.
Totally not.
They would, and let's talk about VGJ Thunder for a second, because this is a team that I almost kind of forgot. It's like people still get them confused. That it's like, oh wait, that's the China team. That's right. That's not Storm. You know, that's not the North American guys. This is a team that qualified for TI8. They were the ones that they're sitting back, being like, Virtus Pro, come on, win. And sure enough, VP did. So of course, that's what ultimately got them that 8th place spot over Optic. It's like, and I understand the points worked out as they did, but this team does not feel like a team that deserved to qualify for TI8 right now. I'm just going to be blunt about it. And you know, you look at what they did. They finished runner-up to Optic in Star Ladder. In fact, I'll pull it over on the screen for you guys. They finished runner-up to Optic at the Star Ladder Minor. They finished runner-up to Evil Geniuses at GESC, which was one of those events that a lot of people considered like it felt like a true minor because it wasn't necessarily the most top-tier competition there. And then what else do they do? That's as far as top 2 goes. Hey God, how do they manage? I guess they had a couple of 3rd, 4th place finishes as well. Did they do well at a major? They must have did decent at a major then.
Yeah, it looks like they got 2nd at the Bucharest. Is that correct? I think I'm looking at the screen.
Okay.
Which is a major, obviously.
MDL, I guess they finished. No, that's VGJ Storm. I'm going to get confused again. Damn it.
Yeah, the Bucharest major, they were runner-ups.
Bucharest, there you go. Okay.
But, I mean, yeah, truth be told, I feel like all of the VGJ hype recently has been around Storm just because they've, you know, been this kind of up-and-coming team that's sort of perhaps taking over the title of best team in NA. Meanwhile, Thunder are kind of just riding on the laurels that they had from the early to mid part of the season. You know, that being said, if you look at their roster, they obviously have some really, really good players. They're coached by ROTK. DDC is an amazing captain. But they just don't quite seem to have that, like, I don't know, that special something that would make them seem like they could actually make a run at TI, like a lot of the other teams do.
I would expect a lot more out of a team like Optic, hell, out of Evil Geniuses if they connect. You know, I think that's a good way to put it. They're not a team that they're kind of just like, oh yeah, they're a solid China team. They'll get top 12 maybe. You know, congratulations. Right. So, but obviously, again, they got enough points to get the 8th place. I'm not saying they shouldn't have gotten it, but they're like out of the top 8 teams, that all the 8 teams that did qualify, they're the one that I'm sitting here like, okay, like for example, if we didn't have the points, imagine this, if we didn't have the points system, how different the 8 invited teams would have been. Like if it was just based on Valve inviting, like it's been in previous seasons, I guarantee you Thunder would not be one of those 8 teams. It would probably be. I mean, it might have been an Optic. It might have been a TNC. You know, it might have been somebody else over VGJ Thunder. So,
yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I'm sure that Valve always had their system going on for their invites.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'd be happy for Thunder to surprise us at TI. Like,
true.
There's no reason that they couldn't. But currently, how they've looked basically for the entire season does not lead me to be overly optimistic that they will, you know, make a run.
That is ultimately the best way to put it. So, I'll start to look up some stats right here from the Super Major. Always fun to do to see anything that really stood out. You know, we mentioned in the previous week how the group stages at least were leading into, as far as some fun hero stats, you know, things like Bloodseeker. Okay, pulling up now, Sand King ended up being the most played hero. He's just one of those. That's not surprising. Actually, 84 matches for Sand King. Next was Leshrac at 65. So Sand King was just boom. He was 20+ matches over anyone else as far as heroes go.
He's one of those heroes that just, you know, he could be an offlaner. He can be support. He fills so many different roles in the team. He's just kind of like a Swiss Army knife, basically, and you can first to him in almost every single game without a lot of repercussions. Mm-hmm. So there's always a couple of those heroes every tournament where the pros are just like, all right, this is my opener. We're going to go with this every single game, and that's just Sand King for this tournament.
Classic Clinks getting a 22 kill-to-death assist ratio. He just dominated, apparently. I wonder how many games he was actually played. He's played twice. He was played twice. So he actually, for 2 games, you know, 22, he was 2-0 in those 2 games. But no, that's a little bit of a skewed stat right there. How about this? I always like to see like the highest win percent. Who got a 100% minimum? Chen was 9-0. Chen was 9-0. Io was 9-1. So I think those are 2 heroes that we saw banned a lot, of course.
Yep.
And the stats definitely back that up here, as far as that goes. So not surprising.
Yeah, they're also 2 heroes that teams that are really good at them play them, and then a lot of other people don't play them.
True.
Because they have like a specific impact, and you have to have very good strategies with those heroes for them to work.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you got heroes like Bane. Solo plays that so much for Virtus Pro, so his win percentage is, you know, a little bit higher, perhaps because of that. Yeah,
unbelievable
for being fourth played heroes. Yeah, 64% essentially. That is very good. And there was a lot of matches. I mean, again, Sand King 84 matches. This is from one tournament. There was a lot of games that were played here at the Super Major. So you could definitely take something from these stats to see where the meta's at right now and everything. But yeah, nothing else really standing out too much. What heroes weren't played? Alchemist, Techies, and Ursa are the only 3 heroes not played. Did not get to see Techies.
Ursa is garbage. That hero is so bad
How
right
dare
now.
You. Yeah, that is the one where it's a little bit like, because Techies and Alchemist, right? They're kind of cheesy heroes. Ursa's, yeah, I mean, okay, I guess he's garbage. I guess he's garbage.
He does nothing. He wins his lane, and that's absolutely nothing for the rest of the game right now. Unfortunately, as a fan of that hero, he just is totally not viable.
All right. So yeah, that's kind of the recap of the Super Major, guys. Again, Liquid over Virtus Pro. If for some reason, you know, it happened almost a week ago now, but if you missed the grand finals, it's one of those grand finals. Highly recommend watching it, even if it's just through highlights or whatever. Perhaps on New from UA, you can watch on Arcast. No, but it was one of the better grand finals of the season. It's hard to sit here and like analyze every single grand finals that we had, but at least ones that I recall. I mean, it definitely, first off, not many go 5 games, obviously.
Right.
This one went 5 games. It had 2 of arguably the best teams in the world going at it, 2 of the more popular teams, and Liquid, of course, the defending TI champions, taking it in the end. Spoiler alert right there. So check it out. It was a fun. Overall, a great event. Again, there really weren't many issues. We stressed it last week, maybe with the whole PC issues. It seemed like during the main event, though, especially, wasn't really much. I think it was a very just smooth ran event.
Good stuff. Yeah. One interesting thing about the grand finals is that the 2 games that VP won were like pretty stompy.
Yes.
Like they stomped Liquid pretty damn hard in both the games they won, and then the other ones were a lot closer.
I think I remember pointing that out going into Game 5. It's like, because it was obviously 2-2 at that point, and saying to myself, VP, their 2 wins were a lot more dominant than Liquid's 2 wins, that's for sure. And one of Liquid's wins, the Game 3 win, was that Drow strategy of Drow, Wind Ranger, Mirana, and then you throw a Beastmaster on top of that with the Inner Beast.
That's
Dear
so dirty.
God.
So dirty. Yeah.
Virtus Pro was like, how do we deal with this? They clearly could not in that game. So it was that was one of the 5 games. Again, but that's the other thing too. Even looking at the recap here, there were so many different heroes. There was a plethora of heroes in this one series alone that the teams played. So these teams definitely come through when it comes to that.
Yeah, I mean that's what makes Dota great. It's like the amount of diversity and strategies that exist, and the way that people the game. It's like that's why we watch this game. That's why we play it. That's why you can play 20,000 hours and still be finding out new stuff.
It's amazing, man. That's why it's had such a long life and many more years to come, hopefully. Dota is not a dead game, believe it or not. All right. So that's a super major. TI qualifiers. That leads us into the TI qualifiers now. Of course, it's starting off with the open qualifiers and then into the main event. Now, let's start with, before we get to the open, let's start with the main event first. And now, of course, it's not happening yet. It happens next week here. It's going to be 3 regions like for 4 days and then 3 regions for the next 4 days.
Regional qualifiers.
Regional qualifiers, yes. That's a good way to put it. There was a big announcement that came out last week, of course, as far as how many teams were going to be qualifying out of each region, and also which teams would be initially qualified, not having to worry about the open. Now, we pretty much knew what that was going to be, of course, for pretty much all the regions. It was basically whichever teams had not changed rosters, which wasn't many. There was, well, most regions either had 2 or 3 invites at the most because of that, but welcome to this season of DPC.
Yep.
Now, but again, I go back to the biggest news, however, was the fact that North America, good old America, got 3 spots that will be qualifying for TI8 in total. CIS, Europe, Southeast Asia all got 1 spot. China got 2, and South America got 1, as expected right there. But the biggest drama was no doubt North America getting 3. This caused a lot of very well thought out and good discussion by the Reddit community and just everyone in general. This, fantastic job. No, it was a shit fest. I mean, people were just throwing, their points, which wasn't really that great of points in the first place, and basically there was a lot of biasness going on, NA bias and CIS bias, etc. The biggest ultimate point, though, Donnie, being that NA didn't deserve 3. If anything, they should have given 2 slots to CIS. I know was the biggest argument, and then 2 to NA. I'll give it over to you first, rambling on here. What did you think when you first saw the 2NA? Or 3NA, excuse me.
I was a little surprised. Initially, I was a little surprised just because it seemed kind of imbalanced. But the more that I thought about it, and then I read a couple of articles. There was an article by I think it was like Cybersport that was really good. Knoxville's article was really good. That kind of explained more technically how the invites and like that sort of like the slots were probably broken down by Valve. And looking at the actual data and like over the entire season, how each region actually placed and all of the tournaments and how many tournaments they actually went to, and taking out the fact that Na'Vi really shouldn't have been in the top of the DPC because of their transfer for Lille. It really kind of convinced me that NA should have 3. And if anything, the other slot for CIS should have come from China.
Yeah, that's one of the arguments, is that China got 2. Now, of course, so China, 4 teams qualified out of China, I want to say? Yeah, you had LGD, Vici Gaming, Newbie, and VGJ Thunder. So yeah, the 4 teams being invited, and then the 2 now on top of it. So that means we're gonna have 6 teams out of China, and it is China's year after all. But you do look at that, and that was one that I could see why that argument is being brought up. Now, I guess my counter to that, not necessarily that I'm fully behind it, is the idea: should a region be penalized because they have so many good teams that are already qualifying for the event itself, right? And I know that you can kind of fit that for regions like Europe, too, and CIS for that matter. I mean, it pretty much goes over every region except, I guess, North America and South America were the only 2 not to have a team that was part of the top 8. But, I mean, that's that ultimate question. And personally, it is a tough spot. I see that because, like, the idea that they had to go through tougher competition in the first place, knowing that 4 Chinese teams qualified in the top 8. So getting to these events were that much more difficult. Now there were a lot of invites for the teams as well. So, there is that to take into consideration. But I think I lean towards more I'm fine with the fact that China got 2 is my ultimate kind of thought process there. Simply because I don't think a region should get penalized because they had so many dominant teams coming out of it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not saying that China's being penalized. I'm not totally sold that anybody other than LF1 China looks better than some of the CIS teams right now. That's where I'm coming from. But I mean, that being said, the breakdown of how, you know, everybody was, of course, there's always recency bias in this kind of thing, right? And so people see Fly to Moon make 2 really good runs, at least through qualifiers and then at tournaments, and they're like, oh, Fly to Moon is the next best team in CIS.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's like, okay, well, they made 2 good runs in a, what, like 10-month season?
Yeah. that's pretty much a great way to, yes, that's my biggest counter argument. And as you said in those articles that you mentioned earlier, that was one of the bigger points that I brought up, is that we do have this in the moment, which naturally is something, especially when it comes to sports, esports, whatever, you know, people like to remember things that happened a month ago, not, you know, 8 months ago at the beginning of the season.
Right.
And it should have been a whole season of quality and success that led to this point. And CIS, Virtus Pro, obviously the most dominant team in the world, you can argue. But then as far as the other teams in CIS, it definitely starts to drop a tier. And they constantly went through roster changes throughout the season. Now, every region did to an extent. But yes, Fly to Moon is the perfect example. Again, I was there at Epicenter. I felt the hype in person. It was a crazy event, and they were I think it's comparable to the Ad Phenom of the Boston Major, a team that not many people maybe expected. They're all from one specific region, and they just kind of came out of nowhere and exploded onto this massive event, and ultimately took 3rd place, even defeating, you know, VP along the way. But as you're getting at too, that was one event, and then their following event didn't necessarily do too well in the end. So you take that in consideration. It truly was just one event. Then you got Na'Vi with the whole Lil situation of that's the only reason why they had so many points in the first place. You have solid teams in Spirit, Empire, Vega Squadron, but they too have constantly gone through some roster changes, and we don't necessarily know what level these teams are as well. So I'm not sold on this big idea that people were really trying to stress that, oh, they absolutely deserve 2 spots. You know, it's ridiculous, blah blah blah. I don't think they do, and I think that when you look at the whole season. And I know that there's even the argument, it's like, well, why don't they just invite the top 12 teams instead? But then, well, okay, you look at that, and guess who's 9, 10, and 11? It's North America. You got Storm, you got Optic, Storm, and EG. So that would have then been the North American team. So
yeah, there were just multiple pieces of supporting evidence for there being 3 NA invites, and then everything else kind of being structured how it is. So I really don't have a problem with how it is. I mean, I'm sure that there are still some people who are having emotional reactions to the fact that, oh, you know, EG's garbage. So, like, look at what they did at the Super Major. It's like, yeah, this team was together for literally 6 days before they played in the most stacked tournament of the entire season. So,
now the one other thing that I did think about that I find, again, a little curious, kind of questioning myself even, is Optic not qualifying for TI8 did essentially hurt CIS, because if Optic qualifies for a top 8 spot, then North America most likely only gets 2 spots, and then that other spot is more than likely given to CIS, perhaps, maybe Europe, but one of those 2 regions, and then everything is fine, right? Like maybe we're not having all this drama as a result. So that to me feels a little iffy, and that kind of goes back to the whole idea that, I don't know, should Valve be more open from the beginning of the season and say, like, we're having this many teams from each region no matter how it plays out? Or are they allowed to kind of react to how the season played out and then evaluate near the end like they did here? That's I guess, kind of the ultimate question to answer all of this in the end. So it's a tough spot. It is.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, ultimately, it feels like it should be kind of set from the beginning, just because it allows people to kind of know where they stand at the very beginning of the season. That being said, like, the tinkering with how many invites there are based on, like, what are the best teams does kind of allow you to basically ensure that the best teams are all at TI. But
which is good.
It's definitely,
I mean,
yeah, which is, you know, undoubtedly good.
Yeah.
But it also does kind of make everything a little bit, like, you know, I can understand, why didn't you just invite the top 12 teams? Like, why not just completely scrap the actual invites and the DPC points and just invite the teams that you think are the best? Yeah. So, you know, there is that argument to be made with the sort of last minute figuring out who's actually being invited.
I think we'll also, in future shows here, we'll definitely kind of break down more of the DPC, how it played out this last season, and kind of looking forward to the new one. And even as I was going to bring up this point, it's being brought up in chat right here by Fluffy Panda. PPD, in fact, brought up the idea that the top 8 teams at events should have been getting points this whole season rather than just the top 4, because you got some of these lesser teams that maybe aren't getting as many chances to go to these events that maybe wouldn't be able to get top 4, but snuck into the top 8, could have got enough points to possibly, help them out there. So that's something else to think about. But again, that's more discussion down the line as far as future DPC stuff goes. But
totally, and
yeah,
I mean, I think aren't all these points ultimately addressed in next season's structure anyway?
That's true. Like we saw with the announcement last week, it's a lot is already changing, and I think we've all agreed it's for the better. So yeah, let's not overthink it, I guess, is the ultimate point here as well. But yeah, it is 3 NA, and us being both NA, I'm sure people will even watch this, and despite our great points, they'll still be like, "Oh, NA bias," and you gotta live with that. In the end, I mean, I'm happy that Complexity has a free spot now in NA as a result of this. They're going all the way, baby. Okay, I shouldn't have said that because that's probably not true. It's going to be a tough competition still, even though that there's 3. But
yep.
Anyways,
let's get into the opens, man.
Yeah.
I'm so ready to talk about this.
We do have a lot of these opens taken off, and again, because of this podcast being pushed back to Thursday now, opens have already started. In fact, NA has now even officially begun. So
happening right now.
I figure we'll start with the NA region to kick it off as far as these open qualifiers go, and kind of just give our brief takes as far as teams to look out for. Who's our predicted teams perhaps to ultimately not only move on but go from there. All right, so showing the screen off. So this is the North American region. As far as NA teams, again, there's only it's Optic and Immortals right now is sitting in the main qualifiers. And I want to say 6 more teams qualify, so 3 from each open.
Yep.
Not mistaken. So, all right, you got your usual Complexity, Evil Geniuses, VGJs. It's just crazy to me just seeing these teams. And they're along with teams like Team Slam Dunk and Blue Pikachu. It's
right.
It just doesn't feel right.
Hey, don't sleep on the Blue Pikachu, man.
Never sleep on the Blue Pikachu. They had the upset though. What didn't they beat EG or something like that? It was
they beat Complexity, I think it was.
I think they beat EG, man.
The final straw. Maybe so.
Yeah, it was quite the performance by them. I'm trying to get the better. There was a Reddit post. Oh, here we go. Yeah.
Yeah, the Reddit posts are the good ones because it shows all the rosters.
There we go.
Shout out to Reddit to being super useful and awesome.
Hey, that's why we keep checking, because every now and then useful posts come out like this, so it's good.
Totally.
Okay, so North America, again, teams to look out for. We know the known teams, but what about some other teams that stand out here? Right off the bat, Backstabbers definitely, KVH Boris. The IX Mike stack is basically what you'd want to call this one.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some talent on these other teams. Like we've got Leviathan Reunion with BSJ, Sammy Boy, Jenkins, Newsham, and Lokarn. We've got I heard Grant talking about Baidu King's team. Apparently, it's a bunch of Chinese American players, and they're coached by like an ex-Tong Fu player, if I'm remembering that correctly. I mean, basically, what you have is like a who's who of the top leaderboard players in NA who have formed stacks together and are now playing, hoping to unseat one of like the 3 main sponsored teams, essentially.
Yeah. So let's just assume Complexity, Evil Geniuses, and VGJ Storm will qualify from the first one. So then I guess then the ultimate question is what are the next 3 teams, right? What are the next 3 teams that we would expect to possibly move on? And kind of the first glance right here, I do think the IX Mech stack does have a good chance. Backstabbers. There's another team that. So the BSJ's squad is interesting because I feel like this hit or miss. Now Newsham I know is a great player. Jenkins of course has done a lot of content. Solid player himself. Noble Wings definitely comes to mind. So I could see that team moving on. This is definitely more of like a Grant question for sure. He's the one that knows like all these guys.
Yeah, where's Grant when you need him, man?
Yeah, he's busy casting actually.
He's casting these games. That's true.
That are going
yeah, I'd say maybe Feels Nugget Man. I know I've seen all these players playing in these regional qualifiers before. Whitebeard, I know, has played Derp Derp, was on Wheel for a while. Dragon Fist, I think, might have also been on Wheel. But basically, all these players on that team have been around, like the tier 2, tier 3 NA teams for a while.
Mm-hmm. There are a couple of names that one that really stands out to me is Monkeys Forever. He's an NA player, offlane player usually. He's just one of these pub star guys to an extent, and he's had some stages with some teams. He's been around the block for a while.
Yeah.
He did not find a team apparently for these qualifiers, and I actually heard him on because I watch the stream every once in a while, and I heard him on stream. He mentioned he didn't have a team this season, so I found that very interesting.
That is interesting because I know I've talked to quite a few people, and everybody seems to really like playing with him. So it could have just been one of those things where he just didn't quite have the time, or there's just no timing. People had already, registered their stacks or something. Who knows?
All right, so NA, yeah, and then I on a serious note, I do think Blue Pikachu is definitely a contester for that too. So I would probably say like a Backstabbers, LVT Reunion, and I'm gonna go Blue Pikachu. I'm gonna say those are my 3.
Those are the top 3.
Those are my 3.
I definitely think that Baidu King's team is.
Okay, Team Baidu over there. So yeah, the NA Open qualifiers have started now again. It's 2 open qualifiers for each of the regions. In NA's case, there's 3 teams from each one will advance on. Each of them lasts 2 days. I believe it's best of 1 until the round of 8 or the round of 4 even. Let me double check that actually.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's best of 1 all the way through?
No, round of 8.
Are you sure? Because on the face of bracket it says best of 1.
I mean, I'm looking at Wikipedia.
Oh, does it say best of 3?
BO3 round 8.
Semifinals and finals are best of 3. Yeah, according to Wikipedia.
Yeah.
See, I thought they were best of 3, so that would make more sense to me. So I kind of hope, because this is a pretty big deal to have it just best of 1 at that late of matches.
It's always been that way, where it's BO3 for the semifinals and finals.
That makes sense. Okay, so that's something to look out for NA. And again, that ultimately sets up into the regional qualifiers, which I'm trying to think. Are we next week's going to be interesting as far as a show goes actually. So I'm wondering, should we just preview now who then we expect, or do we wait for the open qualifier? No, I think we'll do one earlier on. So let's not worry about that just yet.
Yeah, I mean, how are we
Yeah, let's just worry about
these teams are going to go to regional, right? Okay,
so South America taking place here. Now, of course, this was big news. Team, what does it even stand for? GDV? That's what it's tagged up here. Yeah, I forget what it stood for. But point is, this is the Fear, Tomato, Gunnar, Moose, and Swinomelons. Moose is maybe the only player I may not recognize, but everyone else you definitely do.
Yeah, I think his name is something different actually in game. But
okay.
Obviously, I mean, Kyle and Fear moving to Peru to play in the South American qualifier is a pretty big move.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for them, they are going to have to play against teams like Pain, Infamous, SG, and SG actually also picked up a couple NA players, Flea and Stan King.
That's right.
I assume moved to Brazil for this tournament as well. So, and that's actually something that's really interesting if we're looking at all of the open qualifiers. There's a lot of moving around this year. There are players from all over the place in all the different regions, trying to find the best angle to get to TI.
And you look at a team like GDV with the Fear of Swinamelons, etc. That was what stood out to me when they announced that they were going to South America. Why? I mean, there's 3 NA spots. One, I think you can argue NA may have been the better chance, because South America's not a gimme. We've seen throughout the season, Pain Gaming specifically is a legitimate team. And then you obviously have Infamous as well. SG Sports, as you mentioned, now picking up Flea and Stan King. I think you really could have made the strong argument that they would have been better off in perhaps a much more comfortable NA region, that they even know better when it comes to some of these other players and teams. I was shocked to hear that they were going to SA again, especially being only the 1 spot. I don't think it's going to be nearly as now. Either way, it was going to be tough. Let's be honest. It's not like NA all of a sudden they're going to be getting that 3rd spot by any means, but I do think that the chances would have been stronger in NA. I don't know if you feel the same, but
yeah, I don't know if I feel that way. One other thing to remember is that Tomato was probably ultimately, let go from VGJ Storm because of visa issues. So perhaps he couldn't have even come to the U.S. to play in the U.S. region.
True.
Perhaps.
That's a good reason. That's actually a good point. I don't think they knew. I mean, I think that's possible too. That maybe they didn't know. Maybe they just assumed it was only going to be 2 NA spots, and they had already made the decision before that happened. Like, so if that would make more sense then, before they knew about the 3. But either way, it was going to be tough. It is kind of fun seeing them in South America.
Yeah, it's really interesting that Fear is giving it a go, because everybody thought, at least I thought, I know that a lot of people thought that Fear was just kind of like, okay,
done.
He just had a kid. He just had a kid. He's done for the season.
I thought he's just done in general, frankly. I thought he's come back as a coach maybe, and like he was actually going to be done as a player. But yeah, no, I'm with you.
It's nope, moving to Peru. Let's go.
It's like all of a sudden, and we're going to Peru, and I'm once again competing for a TI spot.
Yep.
That was good on him though, keeping the grind going. Definitely has a skill for it, so that'll be a fun team to look out for, of course, in the South American region.
Yeah, and then I mean, let's see, they get 3 qualifiers for each Open as well. So I mean, we'll see quite a few of these teams that are listed here at the actual regional qualifiers. So I mean, I would expect that we do see Infamous, SG, Pain, probably. I would say probably like Midas Club. They've been kind of a standard team at the qualifiers for SA region.
Yeah.
Maybe we see GDV there. Who knows? We'll see.
As far as the South America regional?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, GDV's making it South America regional, of course.
I think so. I mean, they've been playing together for what, like 2 days?
these are good players. Tomato's always been one of the best South American players in general. This is a good enough roster to make top. I believe it's 6 teams, right, for South America as well that move on, because I think there's 2 right now that are already there. I can double check here. South America main qualifiers. No, wait. Oh yeah, there's 16, but that's right. There's actually no teams South America that are pre-qualified. That's right. So it's actually, but it's 3 and 3, just like it is for NA. So there's only going to be 6 teams in the regional. That is interesting, huh? Well, that's okay. That's I still think that they should be good enough to make the top 6 in South America. It's not. It goes back to it's not easy though. It definitely is not.
Yeah.
Not a pushover. All right, so those are NA and SA. Taking a look over now at the CIS and European regions. Well, let's start with CIS. Okay, so this is obviously a hot region as well for a couple of reasons, as we've already talked about.
And we're pretty far into the qualifiers as well already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this post has actually done a good job also marking off which teams have actually already been knocked out. Again, this is the first of 2 qualifiers, but still.
Right.
It's Vega and Fly to Moon, by the way, are the only 2 teams that are invited, and then yet again, there's going to be 3 and 3. There's going to be 6 more teams joining those 2. So, the teams definitely as Navi, of course, standing out there. You got Spirit. You got Empire. Yep. I guess Gambit.
SFT has been a name that's been in the CIS qualifiers for a bit. Double Dimension. Megalada.
Yeah.
But I mean, dude, it's hard to say who's going to come out of this one.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, oh wait, actually, Fly to Moon was okay. Never mind.
Fly to Moon's already in there.
Okay,
they were not knocked out or anything. That'd be crazy. No, Spirit, Empire, and Navi for me are you say it might be like personally. I think those are the 3 that, just like NA, like those are the 3 obvious teams for me. And then you start to get into some other teams that are a mixture of just solid players, maybe not as experienced. I think Double Dimension, Espada Esports are 2 that very much so stand out to me right there. And then wasn't there a team with Scandal? Yeah, Megalada. Okay, that's
yeah,
that
Megalada.
Team. I've always been a Scandal fan. He's an old school Han guy, so I always gotta.
Totally, you got the Moonlord Funnick playing the 1 in this team. You got Broodmother
Yeah.
the maestro of Broodmother Mag playing the 3. You know, this team could definitely make some runs.
Yeah, I can see that.
And then I guess according to Liquipedia, only one team has actually made it to the top 8 so far, which is not even gonna try to pronounce it, but it's the team with GG, well played, Lanaya, Sochlo, Yamich, and TTR.
Okay.
So,
wait, what? I'm not even seeing that team on CIS.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm not going to try and pronounce. I don't even know what their team name means. I don't want to say some random
there they are.
Bad words in Russian.
Okay, yeah. I see that guy. Okay, I see them right there. Okay, another one to look out for. But yeah, so that's the CIS region though. Again, to lead into top 3 of each qualifier. Move on.
And actually, Seneko has a team with like a bunch of people that I haven't heard of before.
Yeah, it's kind of like that's one of those things of like Seneco's a great player, but as you pointed out, yeah, a bunch of not really the most.
They got knocked out already anyway.
Yeah, they did. They get another chance, but already getting knocked out, not the best start for them. And then that leads us over to Europe.
Yeah, looking at this open qualifier in Europe, I gotta say that this open qualifier is pretty darn stacked. Like everybody was like, "Oh, Europe's weakest region," but this open qualifier there's a bunch of good players in this one.
There's a bunch of good players. I think it's a region though also where not a lot of people were that surprised to see only getting one qualifying spot. You know, they already have Liquid and Secret, of course, representing them, and the tier after those two teams has been. It's been a very rocky season, I think is maybe the best word to use for the European region. It started with Kingwin, right? Like that was a team like that exploded out of Europe. We're like, okay, maybe we should start paying attention. And then they kind of died off. OG throughout the whole year was always fairly disappointing. Resolution never really worked out. They eventually made the roster change. Even then, it was very rocky. Then the final Tribe later on in the season started making a bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Explosion onto the European scene, and we'll go with that word. Point is, they started having some success in the European region, but that was much later on. You know, how much of that should we look into? So now the interesting thing about Europe as well is that there's 4 regional qualified teams. You got Kingwin, the Final Tribe, Kingdra, which is Charlie, Cancel, Sexy Bambo, Buryu, and Jabs. And then Singularity, even. Mastermind, Mikey, Sullen, and Bashruk. Those are the 4 teams that were invited. And so only 4 teams more will qualify, 2 from each open. So it's that much tougher in the opens for the European region even.
Yeah.
But yes, as you're pointing out, yet again another case of very difficult region. There are some fun teams like the Admiral Bulldog stack, which was knocked out right here. But seeing actually some of these names that were knocked out already. Freaking Team Picani, Oliver, 9, Boogie, Afromoj. Those are great players, actually. This is a great squad. It's like almost former Penta.
IGX, the return of March, QO, JO, Ryzen, and Nuts. So a bunch of SEA players going to Europe to play there.
That's right.
And they looked pretty good. They were playing some March offlane Spirit Breaker. Obviously, Misery's team is already out. Blinkpool with Madara, Kaiser, Kazu, and Saksa. They've been knocked out. But then you've got another NA stack actually in Europe, which is Wind and Rain with Ritsu, Bryle, Farev, Milan, and Kitrak. And they've been looking pretty strong as well.
Who are these players knocked out? I'm pulling up the bracket right here. So, yeah, there's some. So what was the Misery team called? They're called, where were they? They're right here.
They were called Blinkpool, yeah.
Who did they
actually
lose to?
I saw this game. And it wasn't really very close.
Wow, they didn't even make it to the round of 32? What the hell?
They played a good team early on.
They must have.
They played one of the really good teams early on. I'm trying to remember who they actually played.
Yeah, because I'm looking at the Wikipedia bracket, which starts at the round of 32, and they're not even in that. So, yeah, they must have got matched up unfavorably.
I think they lost to IGX, if I remember correctly, which is the JOQO March stack.
Blank. I'm searching blank. I don't even see that. What the hell? They must have had a different name on.
Yeah, they got knocked out by QO stack.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to find it sometimes. Okay, well, so that makes a little more sense. It's a little bit unfavorable. I mean, not really though. It's like it's you got to obviously defeat some of the more solid teams throughout. So it's and best of one. It's tough, but I mean, Blakepool. I'm not saying I expected them to go all the way necessarily, but it's a little surprising to me just to see them be knocked out. I think that being 4 teams to qualify, I think you could definitely list them as one of those 4 teams, but they're knocked out of the first one. They only get one more chance now.
Yeah, pretty long shot at this point.
5 Dogs. That's what their name was. Yeah, for some reason I forgot that. Alliance. Well, OG Esports is the one that I think a lot of people would absolutely no doubt expect to move on. But even them, again, they're playing with 2 new players again. Yes, Ana has history with them, but it's been a long time and it's a different squad. You got Thompson, a very new player to the team and to competitive Dota in general.
They'll make the regionals.
Like, I would hope so. I would hope so, but I definitely don't think it's as guaranteed. This is the first region where I'm sitting here like I'm not very confident calling, really any team. I'm really not. I mean, even Alliance has their issues, right? It's a solid squad. Quake now replacing Loda. Mickey's going to the 1, but they have their own issues.
Yeah, I actually wouldn't be surprised if Wind and Rain makes it. They look pretty good.
Yes.
This is not NA bias. I actually watched like 3 of their games earlier this morning, and they were, they looked like a well-formed team at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So.
LOTV is a fun squad as well. That's one of those kind of dark horse teams I think you could say is Wagamama. He is a streamer, but he's a very good player. And they've been playing throughout the season in kind of these more lesser known events, but they've been constantly getting a lot of practice as a result. So they've been playing together for a while throughout most of the season. I would not be surprised to see them in the regionals at least. Not saying they're going to make a huge splash, but I could see them qualifying.
Yeah, I could also see them qualifying for the regionals. I mean, they will have to go through ultimately OG, I would expect, in the current one, since they are going to match up against them in the round of 4 if they end up beating Elements.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, I mean, this stack has been together for quite some time, and I think they may have switched out somebody for E-Skills on the 3 at some point during the season, but Waga, Stormstormer, Cupa, and Hovite have been together for pretty much the entire season.
Yeah. So that's Europe. We got, let's go to Southeast Asia now. As far as that region, I don't have the Reddit post, unfortunately, but you got Wikipedia right here. Southeast Asia, who's in the main qualifiers for that one?
You got TNC Tiger, which is the 1437 team with In Your Dream, who's the #1 leaderboard player in SEA. It's got KYXY, and then 458 and Zephyr, who I don't know.
I'm talking about the invited teams, but so the Fnatic, TNC main team, and then Boom ID. That's right. They were another squad that was like a late invite. Valve kind of forgot about them, but they had their 5-man roster. They placed like 5th, 6th in a lot of qualifiers. I think they deserved it. They stuck together for that long. They had decent placements in qualifiers. I'm fine with them being thrown in there for an invited team to the regionals. They're a team out of Indonesia, actually. So those are the 3. But then, yeah, as you're listing there, the notable open qualifier teams out of Southeast Asia. So, yeah, TNC Tiger, you're pointing out.
You got Entity Gaming, which is Black, Pingvacek, Hestajo, Noya, and Joe Beasy. So a bunch of Euros going to SEA to qualify. PG Barracks is there. They were at the Indonesian minor. So it's nice to see them, making a run in the opens here. Obviously, Geek Fam has been around for a while. Alpha Red has been around for a while. But these open qualifiers are not nearly as stacked as some of the other regions.
And so they had 3 invited. So, yeah, so it's actually going to be top 2 from the first one and then top 3 from the second one. That's an interesting way they're doing it. I would have figured they'd just have top 3 from the first and then top 2 from the second, to be honest. But either way, I mean, it's, of course, going to end up being 8 teams, as is all these regions. In the end, it looks like. So, yeah, I think that's a good breakdown, though, of the Southeast Asia region.
And actually, I overlooked a couple teams that have made runs in the past. Execration. They've been
True.
knocked out already in this one. And then there's Ohio's new team as well, which also has Yamate and Net, who have been around for quite some time as well. So there's definitely a lot of talent still in the SEA region, but it doesn't seem maybe quite as stacked as some of the other ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, seeing a run here again. Top 2 from the first one, top 3 from the second one, but some names to look out for there as you listed. Geek Fam definitely one for me. That stands out. Happy feet. Execration, you are right though. That is, and weren't they? Yeah, Execration was at TI last year. I know it's a different roster now, but that's one that you would maybe expect more out of going into this next season. Currently with Nando, Carl, Chemo, and Grim. So yeah, it is a
Chemo
much
and
different
Nando
roster.
there.
Okay, the former players. And then that leads us into China, of course. So as we've mentioned, China, they are getting 2 spots ultimately that qualify. However, Invictus Gaming, the only team that was originally invited to the regionals, there's going to be 7 teams that qualify out of China. Mm-hmm. Of course, on top of the 4 that were already invited to TI8. But yeah, looking at the open for China here, as you know, there are some big name teams. LFY being one of the biggest ones. ID Vitality, eHome, Keen Gaming has had a lot of success throughout this year. These are some brutal open qualifiers, man.
Yeah, and then I mean you've got the Ice stack, you've got the Faith Beyond and Innocence stack. I think Shadow's team was already knocked out. You've got Sakata, who was on a good team for a while. June, Sep. China's always stacked, but these, I would expect that the qualifying teams from this region, LFY +1. I think that's fairly safe to say. I don't think that any of these teams that I'm looking at in the open qualifier plus IG's invite to the regional qualifier really stacks up against LFY to challenge them too much.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see.
No, I'm with you there when it comes to China. But yeah, LFY no doubt has to be a team that you'd expect to ultimately advance on, let alone get through the open qualifiers. Keen Gaming, I've been a fan of theirs as well. With their success, I could see them making a splash, perhaps in the China region. But overall, that's going through all the open qualifiers there. Again, we'll kind of break down / preview more of the regional qualifiers in next week's episode once we get to that point and find out the 8 teams that are going to be in each of those. But that itself, I don't even know if the full I assume it's going to be a round robin mixed into a playoff format like it's been in previous seasons. I don't think the actual format's been announced yet, but I assume that's how the regionals are going to go moving forward. And so it's going to be a good way to determine, and ultimately which teams, of course, go to TIA. It's a pretty big deal. Pretty big deal here.
Fluffy Panda's asking if the 2 owner of TI teams applies to this TI, and the answer is no.
Yeah.
No.
It's a little too late notice for that.
Yeah.
That's something to look forward to for next season, but yeah, it's for Valve to kind of pull out that reasoning there, that logic and the statement even, which is great and it makes a lot of sense, but it is a little bit late notice, so to pull that all of a sudden here, it would be a little shaky.
I mean, we wouldn't see LFY in the qualifiers.
Yeah, we see LFY. Wouldn't see. I guess Vici Gaming also there, so like Newbie Young, for example. So yeah, it would definitely hurt quite a bit in the China region as we expect next season. And that'll be an interesting next season. Again, we'll talk about that more as we get closer to that. But
totally.
I think that pretty much covers it though for the TI qualifiers here. Again, we didn't want to make this too long of a show. Wanted to just get that. This is one of those let's just get the details out kind of show for you guys. And
let you guys go watch the qualifiers as soon as possible.
We know that's what you guys want. That's what we want to do. We'll be honest here. Personally, so it is going to be interesting next week. I believe we're going to try to do a show on Tuesday. We'll confirm that and everything, and try to go back to Tuesday next week. But I actually leave on it's a Thursday. I think it's Thursday morning next week. I'm going to be going out to Los Angeles to the BTS studios. I'll be casting from there, of course, for the TIA qualifiers. I just got word that it sounds like I'm going to be casting NA region as well. So I'm super pumped for that. That's safe to say that's a region I was really looking forward to casting. Now, again, being that there's 3 teams that qualify, it does take a little bit away from the hype. I think you can argue compared to the regions with one like a CIS, but at the same time, it's still going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that. Casting some NA Dota for sure. But so that'll be next week. Later.
We know that third place game is going to be pretty high. Like,
yeah,
once the first 2 teams qualify, that third place game, it's gonna be a lot of nail biting going on.
Oh yeah, those are the best, and those are the best, but at the same time, it hurts because you know that the team on the other side, they're so close to qualifying for a dream and everything, and then just nope, taken away. So it's happened many times before, and it's gonna happen again coming up right here. But another reason I bring that up is because there's a chance I might look to do a podcast even from the BTS studio and take advantage of being there after all. So that's something else to look forward to. Maybe, the day after it all winds up and or wraps up, can look to do something there. But that'll be how we'll keep you guys updated. Donnie, though, I think we're good to wrap up here.
Yeah, man. I don't have a whole lot else to say other than sit back, get yourself a beverage, and enjoy some good old-fashioned crazy Dota 2 qualifier content.
Complexity, man, going all the way. Gonna win NA. It's you asked that question to me earlier. It's like, are you still a Complexity fan? I still am, and I got the jersey and everything. I'm repping here, but it is. I will say it's just not the same without Swinamelons and everything. But I'm still hoping for the best of them, and I think that they can definitely qualify the top 3 spots. So. Donnie, as always, a pleasure talking to you about this stuff. And guys, looking forward to next week's show again. We'll keep you guys posted. Hopefully we get a guest as well. That's the idea. And something else that we talked about, we're going to try to work on it a little bit, possibly getting a segment going for these podcast shows that'll involve you guys, the community, kind of like a viewer call-in segment. We'll give you guys a chance to call in or, join us on Discord in this case and give your take, ask a question or whatever it may be. I've always been a big advocate of having the community interactive with these podcasts, whether it's through polls even or doing something like that. So look forward to that as well in the future shows here.
Yeah, and so actually just to get some community interaction, because I am really curious, if anybody in the chat wants to, feel free to tweet at Breaky or I your boldest prediction for who's going to make it to the regional qualifiers with the hashtag Road to TI, because I'm really curious to see who people think is going to make it.
Road to TI, the bold predictions. All right, there's going to be some fun ones out there, I'm sure. The Admiral Bulldog stack might be one of those. That's probably not going to be happening, but that's why it's a bold prediction.
Exactly.
I guess. All right. But from myself, I elevated here, joining me as a co-host as always, the Dota Procast, guys, wrapping things up. Hopefully you enjoyed episode number 3. We'll see you guys next week talking about some more TI qualifiers, getting into the regional section. Have fun watching the opens, guys. We'll see you next time.